The Carolina Hurricanes opening night is just a few days away, and it's now time once again to predict opening night for the Carolina Hurricanes as well as get this team under the salary cap. All that in this episode of Locked On Hurricanes.
You're Locked On Hurricanes, your daily podcast on the Carolina Hurricanes. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Hey there, Caniacs. I am your host, Jared Ellis, and you're listening to Locked On Hurricanes on the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. And as always, thank you for making Locked On Hurricanes your first listen of this Monday afternoon. I know a lot of you guys are celebrating. The Carolina Panthers finally made a head coaching change. So hopefully this episode will also bring you some joy just like that. But of course, don't forget to follow the show on Twitter and Instagram at LO_Hurricanes and myself on Twitter at Jared Ellis _96. And as I mentioned in this episode, we'll be redoing the opening night predictions as changes have been made. People have gotten hurt, and the Carolina Hurricanes are over the salary cap right now. So we're going to dive into that. First off, this team is currently, as we sit as of recording at 11:22 a.m., they are $4,404,417 over the salary cap. Salary cap is $82.5 million. So this is one that is a little difficult. And because there's a lot of guys that have made cases for themselves. And while I may put this guy in the lineup, I was also thinking of like, okay, what is Brind'amour going to do, and his staff and all that stuff? What are they going to do? That is something I did take into consideration here. So, the big things, to start out with was actually, first and foremost, Jordan Martinook was placed on and cleared waivers over the weekend. So, I I wouldn't put it out of the realm of possibility of him going to the Chicago Wolves, and that is something we'll have to wait and see later on today to see what comes out because they got to get under the cap and get the roster where it needs to be later on today. So we will, of course, know more about this later on in the day. But first and foremost, they need to move their two guys that are going to be on long-term IR to long-term IR, and that is Max Pacioretty and Jake Gardner. And so that in themselves, that's the first thing that needs to get done. Moving those guys over there and getting that money off, especially Max Pacioretty, because in cap friendly, Jake Gardner is listed on regular injured reserve, but I think we all realize he is going to be back on long term injured reserve, and Max Pacioretty, he's going to need to be there as well. And with that, that in itself is probably one of the first moves that needs to be made is getting those guys off of the active roster because Gardner, there's no telling how long he's going to be out, if he's even going to be coming back, or what the deal is there. Pacioretty, as we have talked about, he is going to be out until late January, early February, should all go right with him. So he meets the requirements there for long-term injured reserve for how long he's going to be out. That first and foremost needs to be done. And looking at the roster now, I do think that Derek Stepan will get signed. I think it will not going to be anything crazy, just veteran minimum deal. I think he really earned that. I think he played really well in the preseason, and he still has stuff to bring to the table for the Hurricanes, and that's the big thing. And I do think he will find his spot on this roster this year. So that will be $750,000 there for a veteran minimum contract, 1 year, of course. And going through the forwards, top line, really the top two lines, three actually are going to be the ones that no one is really surprised about, and that is Teuvo Teravainen, Sebastian Aho, and Seth Jarvis there on the top line. On the second line, Andrei Svechnikov, Jesperi Kotkaniemi, and Martin Necas. On the third line, Paul Stastny, Jordan Staal, and Jesper Fast. I think we all kind of expect that to be how those shake out. And fourth line is the one where I think we're gonna see the not drama or anything like that, but that's the one that's more up in the air, I guess you would say. Ultimately, I am going to go with what I think that the Hurricanes are going to do, and that is going to be Jordan Martinook, Derek Stepan, and Andre Kasha. I think that will be what they end up rolling with, at least to start the year. And I know a lot of folks, myself included, were really going ahead and penciling in Jack Drury there at that fourth line center spot. But I think that Derek Stepan really had himself a preseason and training camp and earned that spot for him. And Stefan Nazin, another one as well that a lot of folks really think that he he played really well and deserves a shot, and I do agree there. But I think come opening night they're going to roll with Jordan Martinook, and they're on that left wing position rather than Nozen and or Nazin, excuse me. I think we're all still getting confused on the pronunciation of that. But ultimately, I think that's what they're going to go with there on as far as the forwards, and with Drury and Nazin being scratches. I could also see Martinook being a scratch. I could see Stepan being scratch because there's cases to be made for all of those. And I know, yes, Martinook, again, he got placed on waivers. He cleared, but you know the team is very loyal to him and loyal almost to a fault with Martinook. And I think that they may finally be starting to realize that, hey, he just doesn't, he's not at the level he used to be. And I think that they're finally starting to realize that when it came to the waivers. I think Marty, he's old enough, been around long enough to understand what is this isn't personal and that it's business. I think he understands that. Obviously, he's cleared, but I wouldn't put it out of the realm of possibility of him going to the Chicago Wolves. I would not put that out of the realm of possibility this year. I wouldn't for the rest of the day, honestly. And that is ultimately just going to be something that we have to wait and see what happens. I think it's very much something that could happen. I know a lot of people were really hurt when he got put on waivers because he is such a fan favorite. Guys love him, and he's a good locker room guy, and he has the A on the front of his jersey for a reason. He's a big character guy, a locker room guy, but we have a lot of those. And I think that they realize that the time is coming for them to make a decision, whether it be going to the AHL or potentially a trade. I mentioned that the other day, but ultimately we're just going to have to wait and see on that and see what happens. But in the meantime, we also have stuff to talk about with the defensemen and the goalies as well, and we will do that right after this quick break. Now, folks, our next partner is Athletic Greens, and you guys, that have been around a little while, you guys have heard of this, but say you're new here for the new season, you're going to be asking what is this stuff. With one delicious scoop of AG1, you are absorbing 75 high quality vitamins and minerals, whole food source superfoods, probiotics, and adaptogens to help you start your day off right. This special blend of ingredients supports your gut health, your nervous system, your immune system, your energy, recovery, focus, and aging. And it's lifestyle friendly, whether you eat keto, paleo, vegan, dairy free, or gluten free. AG1 is something that contains less than 1 gram of sugar with no GMOs, no nasty chemicals, or artificial anything while still tasting good. It supports better sleep quality and recovery. It supports mental clarity and alertness. And one of the best things is that Athletic Greens uses the best products based on the latest science with constant third party testing and product and iterations. And it costs you less than $3 a day. You're investing in your health, and it's cheaper than constantly going and getting a cold brew, and it's cheaper than getting all of those different supplements for yourself. You're investing in all-in-one nutritional insurance. So right now, it's time to reclaim your health and arm your immune system with convenient daily nutrition. It's just one scoop in a cup of water every day. That's it. No need for a million different pills or supplements to look out for your health. To make it easy, Athletic Greens is going to give you one free year supply of immune supporting vitamin D and 5 free travel packs with your first purchase. All you have to do is visit athleticgreens.com/NHL network. Again, that is athleticgreens.com/NHL network to take ownership of your health and pick up the ultimate daily nutritional insurance. Now, folks, it's now time to talk about the defense. And I think this is going to be another one like that fourth line that the Carolina Hurricanes got a lot of work to do. And obviously, the first two pairings, I think, are more, we know what that's going to be. That's going to be Jacob Slavin and Brent Burns. Yeah, that's what it's going to be. We all know that. Same with the second pair. It's going to be Brady Shea and Brett Pesce. That's what it's going to be. Now, when it comes to the third pairing, ultimately, I think it will be Calvin DeHaan and Dylan Coghlan. Should Dylan Coghlan be healthy? And he was skating the other day, so it's looking like he'll be all right, come Wednesday. But ultimately, I do think if he is healthy, he will be what they roll with. He looked really good this preseason. And Calvin Hahn did sign that 1-year deal. This is not a two-way deal like I predicted it may end up being. So you figure he is going to be on the roster. That leaves Jalen Chatfield and Ethan Bear out of the mix. And ultimately, I think Chatfield, he was going to be the odd man out regardless. I think, there's too many guys there, and that he was, unless he just had some crazy monster preseason, he was going to be the odd man out. I know it fall between Bear, Coghlan, and DeHaan. Obviously, it is worth mentioning Jake Gardner. We don't know his situation of when and if he will be back. So obviously, if he comes back, then that's where he will be, and that'll be a bridge we cross when we get to it, should we get to it. But I do feel like DeHaan and Coghlan will be the pair that they roll with should Coghlan be healthy. I think Ethan Bear, he is a guy that, like I mentioned the other day, could potentially be finding himself on the trading block. He carries a $2.2 million cap hit. I did forget to mention Jordan Martinook does carry a $1.8 million contract cap hit this year. That is something that a lot of people have been criticizing, and he just hasn't been backing it up. And I do agree, he has not been backing it up. So we will see. Ultimately, I do think, with trends the way they have been with Martinook, he'll likely find himself in the opening night lineup. How long that stays, I don't know. But Ethan Bear carrying a $2.2 million cap hit, I think that he he's another guy just hasn't been backing it up. And yes, last year, you look at the beginning of last year, he did look really good. But then he got COVID and he was suffering the effects of long-term COVID, and he just never got back. And that's probably why he wasn't playing in the playoffs. I thought that in itself was the writing on the wall for him, that he was not going to be back. They really shocked me whenever they signed him to an extension. But ultimately, I do not see him being on that opening night roster. I do think that should the right trade come across, he will be traded because they have so many guys there uh there for that third defensive pairing. So I do think he could potentially find himself traded uh should the right deal come along. Ultimately, I do see him being the scratch for opening night along. I also have Drury and Nazen listed as scratches because with then throwing your goalies, you have your roster size for opening night at 23. That's the limit for 23. And I think both of those guys, they've made cases for themselves, and we'll just have to wait and see what happens with those two. But I think Bear ends up being a scratch for opening night, and same with Drury and Nazen. I think between the two, I could see Drury maybe getting sent down first. I think Nazen has had the better preseason, and I think he would be the one to stay up a little bit longer. But ultimately, we'll just have to wait and see with that. And this is one that it's difficult because, like I said, there's a lot of things to weigh in here, especially like the forwards. They've been very loyal to Jordan Martinook, but as of late, he hasn't been backing it up. I think, again, the waivers, I think that was kind of the first sign that they may be starting to move on and realize that, hey, we got other guys that can handle the locker room stuff. And we don't have to keep him around for that. And we'll see what happens with that. Ethan Bear, another one, a lot of upside, but hasn't been backing it up. And they got other guys that can. And we'll see what happens with them. But we do need to talk about the goalies and where this roster puts them as far as cap come opening night, and we will do that right after this quick break. All right, folks. Now we are back in goalies. We know what it's going to be. It's going to be Frederick Anderson and Antti Raanta. Big surprise, right? We know that's what it's going to be, and we know that. So really, not a whole lot to talk about there with those two. We know that's what it's going to be, and so like I said at the top of the episode, as of this recording right now, the team is for little over 4 million in over the salary cap. $4,404,414 over the $82.5 million salary cap. Now, with this roster, I just pitched to you Teuvo Aho Jarvis, Svetch, Kotkaniemi Natchez, Stastny Stahl Fost, Martinook, Stepan Kasha, Slavin Burns, Shea Pesci, DeHaan, Coughlin, Anderson, Ranta. With that roster right there, also Nazen, Drury, and Bear on scratches. That puts this team right now with Gardner and Pacioretty on long-term injured reserves. That puts them at a salary cap or at a total salary of $75,841,917, with leaving them $6,658,083 in space. again, you know, Pacioretty, 7 million cap hit, that puts them over whenever he comes back. That is where, I think a guy like Martinook goes to Chicago, that frees up that 1.8. Bear traded, that frees up that 2.2 million. Again, I think those are going to be decisions that are made maybe a little bit later. Uh, again, Martinook, as we sit here right now, it would not surprise me if he got sent to Chicago today. It would not surprise me. With, as I said, with the waivers clearing and all that stuff, it would not surprise me one bit if that's where he ended up finding himself to at least start the season. It would not surprise me in the slightest. But I'm just going off of past trends, I guess you would say, not experiences, but trends, is that this team is very loyal to Martinook, and which I do respect, but it has also came to a detriment of the team of him maybe being in a spot where he shouldn't be and where he wasn't justifying it. And I think he's to a point where injuries and age just kind of catching up to him, and he's going to be in a bit more of a role at like a Derek Stepan. A veteran role where he's not what he used to be. Obviously, he was never, top line guy, but I think he's going to be, that fourth line grinder veteran presence. That's going to be his role. And I think he understands that. I think Ethan Bear, that would be one where I don't know. I really don't know. And like I said, with the guys that have came in, he looks expendable. He does. And you also have Jalen Chatfield there waiting in the wings in Chicago for his chance. So I do think Ethan Bear is expendable. He could find himself on the trade block. He very well could. And obviously, should that happen, frees up cap space for Max Pacioretty to come back because, again, that is going to be a hefty cap hit. And it's also worth noting that should Jake Gardner come back, that's an over $4 million cap hit as well. I think it's 4.4 million, 4.5 million, somewhere in that range. That's also a very hefty cap hit. And should he also come back, the Hurricanes are going to have a lot to do because he could come back right now with this roster, and there'd be space. Someone, I think they'd be over as far as guys on the roster, and they'd have to move someone, but they at least have the cap room for Gardner to come back. But I don't see that happening anytime soon. But this is all speculative. This is just me, playing around on Cap Friendly and seeing, what can get done. And we'll just have to wait and see what ends up happening later on today. We'll get answers later and see what we really will be looking at for opening night. One last time, this is what I have for opening night. On the first line, Teuvo Teravainen, Sebastian Aho, Seth Jarvis. Second line, Andrei Svechnikov, Jesperi Kotkaniemi, Martin Necas. Third line, Paul Stastny, Jordan Staal, Jesper Fast. Fourth line, Jordan Martinook, Derek Stepan, Andre Kasha. Defense, Slavin, Burns, Brady Shea, Brett Pesce, Calvin DeHaan, Dylan Coghlan, Freddie Anderson, Antti Ranta as the goalies, with Jack Drury, Stefan Nason, Ethan Bear all being scratches or sent to the AHL. Max Pacioretty and Jake Gardner on long-term injured reserve. But we'll see what it actually is later on today, and we will talk about that in tomorrow's episode. So make sure you are following this show on Twitter and Instagram at LO_Hurricanes, myself on Twitter at JaredEllis_96, and subscribe on YouTube. And make sure you hit that notification bell. And I will talk to you guys in the next episode where we go over what the Hurricanes opening night roster is actually going to look at, not my prediction.